Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and a lot of people have asked me lately, you know what, Jason, in the past you used to say that people don't need anywhere near the protein intakes that a lot of people out there recommend, that you can gain muscle on protein that is well under 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. In fact, you can maximize gains on that. Why have you changed your stance? And I think that's a great question, so let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skill at my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. But when it comes to pure muscle gain, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that's still true. You don't need anywhere near that even to maximize muscle growth. It's not necessary. Absolutely not necessary. I would say for most people out there, even 200-pound men, 150 grams of protein a day will let you maximize your muscle growth. That's probably all that you need when you're bulking and in a calorie surplus. You really don't necessarily need more than that. And for a lot of hard gainers, trying to go beyond that could even be detrimental because it's going to limit your caloric intake if you struggle to eat enough food. It can become problematic. But my overall stance on protein has changed when it comes to body composition, and that's because of the evidence out there, the stuff I've done myself with it. Running much higher protein intakes is one of the reasons I've lost body weight and body fat very effectively this year. I'm down 46 pounds. I have lost 46 pounds of body weight while maintaining good strength, and I'm still cutting. So gone from the fat power lifter to the less fat power lifter. But no, seriously, I'm going to keep cutting, and I'll probably get pretty lean if I just keep doing what I'm doing at this point. You guys have seen the updated photo. You guys have seen where I'm at. So what happened in my philosophy? Well, guys, a lot of this comes down to not being dogmatic, and it comes down to when you are fighting against something that you see as bad, you have to be careful to not let that blind you to different facts. And what I mean there, I actually came to that conclusion when I observed how people fought against me and how people hate me, right? A lot of people out there, even who dislike me, still admit that my information is really good. There are a lot of people who say, I don't like Jason personally, I don't like what he stands for, I don't like him, I don't like his antics, but his information is really good. And then on the other hand, we have the people who hate me so much that they say that everything I say must be wrong, in spite of the fact that for 100,000 followers, tens of thousands of people follow me and get great results. See the problem there? Most of what I say is pretty well backed by the science, the evidence. Plenty of top coaches agree with me on a lot of points. The information isn't bad. So the problem is that when someone then takes that stance of because they don't like someone's antics or ethics or they think they're terrible people to say that everything they say must be wrong, do you understand how moronic that is? Well, I let my hatred of the supplement industries, because I think supplement companies, and when I say that I'm talking about 95% of them, are corrupt. They're con men, they're snake oil salesmen. Most supplements do not work. They do not work, and the evidence for that is pretty strong. And because I see them that way, I've tended to push in the direction that anything they say there must be a hustle involved. It just has to be, right? Well, that's as ludicrous as the people who come after me and say, well, everything Jason says must be wrong. Well, that's ludicrous. That's absolutely ludicrous. But I'm going to admit my mistake here, because we all make mistakes. In my distaste for the supplement industry, I have allowed that to blind me to the fact that there is pretty good credible evidence out there that for people seeking to lose body fat or who are very concerned with body composition, maintaining very tight body compositions, that higher protein intakes than is necessary to build muscle, in fact, dramatically higher protein intakes than is required to build muscle, can absolutely have merit. Particularly for people who are trying to get very lean while maintaining their muscle and strength. People who are attempting to recomp, who have voracious appetites. Protein overfeeding has benefits. It has extreme benefits there. And I agree with guys like Martin Berkham's telling people, look, he runs 50 to 60% of his calories from protein. The dude is lean and jacked and strong. And it's based upon evidence. And you know what? That's what I've been doing. I've been eating approximately 50% of my calories or close to from protein every day for a good chunk of this year. And the scale has just continued to come down, retaining muscle and strength very well considering the amount of weight I've lost. And it works. And I have to admit that. I have to set aside my bias towards the supplement industry and say, okay, there's truth to this, even though they might support it because it happens to be in their favor. But that's what we need to understand. Just because we know that there are benefits to very high protein intakes, that doesn't mean that we have to go support snake oil salesmen and their companies and their products to get our protein intake. Now, I do use protein powders, but I'm very, very, very selective in what companies I use. In fact, I only use one company these days, and I'm not advertising for them, so I'm not going to get into that. Yeah, I use Optimal Nutrition, and I buy it like by the 10-pound bag. But it's just convenience. I don't necessarily need it every day. I can get 300 or 400 grams of protein without touching a protein shake if I'm so inclined. It's chicken, guys, Greek yogurt, stuff like that. It's pretty easy. So the point here is that it's convenient for the supplement industry to do this. And this is what I used to always say, that the supplement companies push this because they want to sell their products. And particularly the stuff of, oh, you need all these protein feedings, 6+ protein feedings a day, really helps them sell their convenience protein sources, right? Instead of people trying to, cook and eat 6 or 7 or 8 meals a day, they can just drink their protein shakes in between. Well, we know a lot of that's nonsense. That actually elevated muscle protein synthesis probably doesn't seem to occur beyond about 3 or 4 protein feedings a day, as long as they're large enough, which can easily be done with meals. And, you have the option. You have the option of using these convenient sources. I would just say pick your companies carefully, look at their ethics, look at consumer reviews and see what's actually in their products, including their protein, things like that. Look at the value for your money. You can use these things, and that's fine. Just look at it from that perspective. And I choose not to support companies that I think are pretty shady, which is most of the supplement industry. So you have that to look at, but by that same token, we can also objectively look at all the data on protein overfeeding. We can look at all the data at this and say, okay, well, there's truth to this, and just because it benefits the supplement companies doesn't make it not true, right? And that's what we have to be careful of, is that bias. Because I admit I am very biased against these companies, and we should be. Anyone with common sense should be biased against the supplement industry. It should be very obvious what it is, that it's a whole scam, top to bottom. But it doesn't mean every product they sell is useless, particularly stuff like protein powder and creatine. It doesn't mean that it's useless, because again, we do have good data on protein overfeeding. Now, does that mean that protein overfeeding, like I'm doing or other people do, is what everyone needs to do? Absolutely not. If you're a 150-pound skinny undereater, and let me put it this way, guys, if you're anything over about 5'6" and you weigh 150 pounds, you are a skinny undereater. I don't give a shit how lean you are. You are an undereater, and you're going to struggle to gain muscle. Look, if you're an undereater, protein overfeeding isn't going to be a good thing. If you're a hard gainer, protein overfeeding isn't a good thing. Why? Because protein decreases your calories in and increases your calories out. So, we're talking about the calorie in and out equation. That's great for people like me who eat a ton of food, right? Who want to eat thousands and thousands of calories. Someone like me who has no trouble eating 4,000 calories a day of whole foods. Well, protein overfeeding is great because it lets me limit my food intake, right? Because protein is very satiating, so you tend to eat less calories when your protein intake goes up, and it has a higher thermic effect. It's more calories out than most other macronutrients. So on the calorie in versus out equation, it can work wonders. For someone who needs to very tightly control their caloric intake, that's great. Furthermore, we know that when you're in a caloric deficit, very, very high protein intakes preserve muscle mass better. So this is fantastic for people who need to trim down, lose some body fat, or even recomp who have voracious appetites. They don't want to necessarily gain or lose much weight. Protein overfeeding is fantastic. But for the undereater, the hard gainer, the reality is ultra high protein intakes are detrimental. Why? Because these people are struggling sometimes to gain even a pound of weight every month. Right? These are people who struggle to get enough food in, particularly if they have to eat whole food, so they're getting all their fruits and vegetables and vitamins and minerals and things. These are the people who struggle to get everything in that they need, particularly once they start training hard and they're physically active. For the hard gainer, the very last thing they need to be doing is protein loading like that, because it's going to make it too difficult for them to gain weight. It's going to make it too difficult for them to gain the muscle and strength that they need to gain. Right? So it's a problem for them. So even when I talk about these higher protein intakes, this is for different demographics. It's not necessarily for everyone. If honestly, if you have no trouble getting visible abs while eating pizza and burgers, this is not for you. This is not who we're talking about. These are the people who probably need to be eating more fat, more carbs, and not focus on protein so much, because it's just not necessary to build muscle in a calorie surplus. In other words, protein intakes as low as, in some cases, even as low as zero point 0.5 to zero point 0.7 grams of protein per pound of body weight in a caloric surplus can build muscle just fine. They build muscle just fine. And most of these skinny guys who are 150, 155 pounds, as long as they're getting over 100 grams of protein a day, if they're in a caloric surplus, they'll be fine. Right? They don't need to try to squeeze in 200 grams or 250 grams if they're struggling to eat, because we go back to that point, it's detrimental for them. But for people in my demographic, it is massively beneficial. It has enormous merit for us. So really it comes down to things like individual appetite, metabolism, goals, all of that is really what it comes down to. And if I'm going to be objective, I have to be honest about that and look at that and say, okay, this has merit for the right populations, for the people with certain goals. Absolutely has merit. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.